Let's talk about
The former.
Luka. Can the Mavericks beat Oklahoma City if this is the Luka they continue to get?
The version that we're seeing right now?
Correct.
No.
And you seem pretty emphatic about that.
In game 2?
Yeah.
Or in the series?
In the series.
In the series.
In game 2, I get it.
I feel like you can come up with a game plan to defeat them in one game, but to win a series like this completely, you gotta have that star on the court at least 90%. Like he's on. It looks like he's not even playing at 75% right now.
Yeah.
Because of the 3-point shot is just not going in the way, like at the clip that we're used to for him. And then the things that I think maybe he would feel more comfortable going to the basket and then dishing or finding some other ways to be more physical as not only as a rebounder, but also maybe doing a little more post stuff that might work for him in certain situations. But he doesn't look comfortable doing that right now at all. So no.
What say you, Reggie?
Yeah, the answer is no. I mean, if we make this, simplify the question.
You make that very emphatic as well. Then.
If we simplify the question, we can make this a lot easier. Can a team win against another elite team? Because we're now in that time period in the postseason where you're typically playing elite teams, especially in the West and the way that it's stacked. Can a team win against another elite team with their star player not near their peak? Largely, by and large, that's a no.
And okay, and so somebody asked this question: Can a Walkman dance? No, I like that. The Mavs cannot win without Luka. But I'm not saying without Luka. I'm saying the Luka you got right now. Because on the surface, if you just look at some of the stats, you're like, oh, man, what a standout first round he had. 30 points a game, 9.5 rebounds. 9.5 assists a game, 9 rebounds. And I appreciate all of that. That's amazing. His shooting percentage in the playoffs is abysmal. He is shooting 39.5% from the field. But let's focus on the thing that the Mavericks really, really need. Especially, I realize Oklahoma City would respect his three-point shooting, but there's a couple of players for the Mavericks that Oklahoma City's like, I don't have to respect your three-point shooting at all. So you need three-pointers to be dropping. Luka is 17 of 75.
Is that good?
No.
Okay.
From three in the playoffs. That is 22.7%. That is awful. And consider the other thing. He's shooting 10 three-pointers a game. And so I get it. That's part of his game, and I understand that. Shoot or shoot. But what you're getting right now is a volume shooter who's shooting terribly. That is the worst possible combination you can have.
Especially in this modern NBA as everything gears towards efficiency. And one of the things that, is talked about, and I think recently LeBron and JJ Redick on their podcast talked about it, is like the playoffs, 1 or 2 or 3 possessions can really shift a game and win you or lose you a game. And those are the possessions that you typically feel great about with Luka Doncic. And you're missing that, right? And especially as you look at the way that the Mavs are situated, him and Kyrie are a brunt or a majority of your three-point shooting. And if he is not in that place, it limits the other things that he can do. Teams are still going to respect it, but they're not going to be able to, or he's not going to be as easy, or it's not going to be as easy for him to get downhill. And then we're also talking about the injury that already affects him getting downhill. It's really tough. And then if we're talking about the Luka that we saw in game 1, another part of that is the careless turnovers. This team is going to turn you over pretty easily already.
Yes.
Adding to the unnecessary ones is only going to make that even more difficult. All those things come together and make me say no.
You need to be in that 10 or 11 range. Like, if we have a realistic range, you need to be in that 10 turnover range if you're going to be winning these games.
You got to play clean basketball, man.
And here's a concerning thing based off of something that Reggie just said. When Luka, after the game, he was like, who cares? We lost. We got to move on to the next one. And I appreciate that. Like, I understand how it's probably tough to sit there and talk about, like, hey, I know you're probably not 100% and you just got worked. Hey, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he said about his knee was it's just hurting. And to your point about getting downhill, less mobility, less explosiveness when I'm driving the ball. And he said these days off gave me a little time to rest, a little bit more rehab, but it's about the same. And that's the concerning part because his three-point shot's already not there. And you've seen plenty of players who, if their shot's not falling, they can get to the rack. All right. So now he's saying, I'm having difficulty with that. And then your fallback would be the flip side is, can you just step back 3-3-3? That's not going either. He's an incredible player, an incredible playmaker, but those are two pretty all-encompassing parts of the offensive game that he's struggling with.
Yeah, and so this version of him, Kevin, is something you can't do without, but that's the way you built your team. And so whenever this happens, what is plan B? Plan B, is it to let Kai cook or to be better defensively? So because you got your defensive side of it has to maximize.
And this came up. And obviously, a lot of people said no. Somebody said we're going to get swept if that's the case.
Oh, no.
But then, I mean, I hope that's not the case.
Take the fall, act hurt. That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying that. From the 214, if Luka lets Kyrie take over the offense, in game one, Luka felt similar to Kawhi being out on the court, hurting us more than he was helping us, which that's a wild thing to say because you never would think you would say that. And I'm not even conceding that point, but you'd never think that would even come up. Then again, I'm sure Kawhi and the Clippers never thought that would have come up either. But 9 assists versus 5 turnovers, you're not feeling super great about that. Shooting 1 for 8 from 3, you're not feeling super great about that. But what do you think about the idea of letting Kyrie be the primary playmaker? The only issue I have with that is parts of that could work, but if Luka, either his knee is hurting him or he's exhausted from the season that was, it doesn't feel like you're going to get back what you were missing from Luka. And surely we're not just saying just take him off the court.
Yeah, well, and Reggie, correct me if I'm wrong here. If Kyrie's the guy at that, you still have Luka on the court, and where he might hurt you the most is defensively, because they will go find him and go after him there. So even if Kyrie is the main playmaker, Luka's not taking 2 nights off in the middle of the second round. Like he did it a couple of years ago whenever he had was it a hamstring that he was dealing with or a calf injury, and Jalen Brunson
he's had a lot of injuries that he's had to fight through.
Yeah, and Jalen Brunson goes off, and then Luka shows back up and is fine for the rest of the playoffs. It never bounced back up on him. And granted, I don't know how much rest he needs on a sprained knee, or if he can play through it and eventually gets better. I have no clue.
Well, sprains are not anything that are going to get fixed quickly. Sprains are, you have to have an extended amount of time to rest and rehabilitate that. So this is going to be something that he deals with. And I think that's probably the genesis of this question is like, you're going to have to deal with some level of hampered Luka. You hope that he can find a way to, get the shot to go in so that it balances out. But that lack of mobility, that's the thing that scares me, because you're right, Corey. They're still going to attack him. I often say that the playoffs are less about what you are capable of doing and more about what you can't do, because that's where people are going to attack. And you saw very quickly, Oklahoma City was like, Luka Doncic, come to the podium. We want to see if you are capable of staying in front of offensive players.
Can you pull over the Legler audio from yesterday? Because I think this would be a good time to use it. And to the sprain point, that's where I appreciate how honest Luka is, as he should be. It's tremendous. But that's the part that sucks, is when they got the Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and Luka said a little bit more time to rehab, a little bit more time to rest, but it's about the same. And I think that's one of the reasons you get audio sound bites like this from, I believe it was Tim Legler talking about Luka.
Listen, the reason I thought Dallas could win this series, it completely hinges on Luka Doncic. And he looks cooked. He looks cooked. He's got no lift. His three-point shot, which is, I think for the most part, he doesn't take contested shots because of his size, his lean back, his ability to get separation. These aren't really contested shots. He's got no lift. All of these shots are hitting front rim. And if he's not making perimeter shots at a high rate, Dallas is cooked in this series. They're not going to have enough. So I'm very concerned. And his body language when he came out of the game, he looked like he was very dispirited by what's going on and what he is feeling. Bad sign for the Mavericks.
You're shaking your head while this was playing. I know it's tough to go after Luka or say anything negative about Luka, but
this is not like effort necessarily that we're going after.
This did not feel like an unfair criticism.
Yeah, this is something that just stinks.
Yeah.
It stinks that the injury happened at this time and that he's dealing with it that way, because it's affecting everything. But again, it is because as good as the team's been defensively, it all does rely on Luka being the hub, the centerpiece of everything offensively. And I mean, even Jason Kidd, as they were getting on the airplane, Kevin, I think I may have talked about this off air with you. They're getting off on the airplane to go to Oklahoma City. And the line was like, what's the message to the team? And everybody had another little thing that they said. Each one of the players, as they're getting on, they're like, oh, it's time to go. It's go time, whatever, as they're doing their thing. And Kyrie Irving, he gets on and he looks at it and he takes a breath and he goes, patience is a virtue. So maybe he's just saying, look, every series is a series and give us some time. We'll figure it out. We're smart. We're a smart group.
Sure.
And we'll eventually figure that out. Don't be too concerned too early. Maybe he was warning us before that. Daniel Gafford, as he's getting on the plane, he says, well, the coaches said a word, but I can't, there's a cuss word in it, so I can't say it.
Appreciate that.
And then Luka gets up, and I can't remember what he said. Like I can't remember the phrase, but it was something along the lines of it's go time or be ready or something. And Jason Kidd's right behind him, and he literally goes, whatever he said.
Yeah.
That's what this team is. Whatever he's doing, that's how we're running things. Unless we can't, then we got to come up with a new plan. And that's where the Mavs are right now.
And I realize this is a better team than the Clippers, but I can see how if you're Jason Kidd, you can easily fall back on, I'm 0-5 in game ones with the Mavericks. I'm 3-1 in series, or Siri, if you prefer.
What?
And so
Syria.
Not
Syria. Don't you keep saying that one. That's the one I want you to leave off.
So I can see how I'm not saying to panic or anything like that. You lost game one on the road. That loss, it's fine. It's the play of your best player and the play of your best player going back to the first round. Because I don't want to make it seem like this was just game one. In the first round against the Clippers, he shot 40% from the field and 24% from three. And so this is a problem that you've seen throughout the playoffs thus far. And I understand the reason that it's happening. It just feels like maybe a bridge too far to overcome if this is the Luka.
Especially when you ask Jason Kidd and you ask him, like, what is the identity? What is the play style of this team? And he says Luka Doncic is it, right? Like, that. And when he's playing well, that's nirvana. And when he's not, it's problems, right? And so, yeah, I don't want to make it seem, though, like it's entirely over, because one of the things is, as you mentioned, Kyrie has been good. There's ways in which when they especially when they're getting a good whistle, the defense can compensate in some ways. And also you can, if you don't make it as easy on the Thunder, right, and give them turnovers, I imagine that you could play tough games. But the margins are exponentially thinner when Luka Doncic is not knocking down his shots, when he's not mobile. And I mean, like, that seems like that's the likelihood of what you get from Luka Doncic throughout the rest of the series, if you're leaning on the idea of the injury